Years ago, before the present administration took over, we were floundering in an effort to keep our heads above water.
They were three of the most recognizable faces on American television. Jackie Gleason thundered as Ralph Cramden, Audrey Meadows cut him down to size as Alice, and Art Carney delivered unforgettable lines as Ed Norton. Together, they formed the core of the Honeymooners, a series that managed to define an era of comedy in just 39 episodes. On screen, the chemistry was flawless. Gleason and Meadows clashed and reconciled in equal measure, while Carney's eccentric timing gave every exchange an extra spark. To audiences, the trio looked inseparable. The assumption was simple: if they laughed together so well under the lights, they must have been just as close once the cameras stopped. But that belief was wrong. When the Honeymooners ended, Art Carney did something few expected. He cut ties completely, and most notably, he never spoke to Audrey Meadows again, not once. When the Honeymooners premiered in 1955, it wasn't just another sitcom. It was television capturing a slice of working-class life with a level of realism and sharp humor that audiences hadn't seen before. The setup was simple. Ralph Cramden, a New York City bus driver, dreamed big but stumbled often. His wife Alice kept him grounded, answering his bluster with wit and patience. And living upstairs was Ed Norton, Ralph's loyal but dim-witted friend, who often became the catalyst for the show's most memorable comic moments. Art Carney's portrayal of Ed Norton quickly became one of the show's defining features. His quirky mannerisms, odd pauses, and deadpan delivery added an unpredictable rhythm that balanced Gleason's explosive style and Meadows' quick retorts. Within weeks, Norton became a household name, and Carney's performance earned him an Emmy Award. The show's cultural reach went far beyond its 39 official episodes. Gleason regularly revived the characters in sketches on his variety show, keeping Ralph, Alice, and Norton alive in reruns and specials. For fans, these three performers seemed permanently linked. Their chemistry looked effortless, the timing flawless, and the affection genuine. That illusion made what followed even more surprising. When the cameras stopped rolling, the relationships weren't what fans assumed. Carney, despite being central to the show's success, began retreating almost immediately. Unlike Gleason, who thrived on publicity, and Meadows, who openly celebrated her time on the show, Carney grew quiet. Over time, his silence would become more than a personality trait. It would define the way history remembered his connection to the cast, and particularly his distance from Audrey Meadows. Behind the laughter, the set of the Honeymooners was not the warm family environment fans imagined. Jackie Gleason was unquestionably in charge. He disliked rehearsals, often rewrote material at the last minute, and expected the other actors to adapt instantly. His authority was so complete that the entire production bent to his rhythms. Audrey Meadows managed well in that environment. She had a background in live television and could adjust quickly to Gleason's improvisations. Her ability to stay sharp under pressure gave the show much of its energy. But for Art Carney, the same conditions were a source of strain. He lived with anxiety that few outside his closest circle knew about, and the unpredictable atmosphere only heightened it. Carney never failed to deliver on camera. His timing remained impeccable, and his strange little flourishes, stretching a pause, fumbling with a gesture, made Norton unforgettable. Yet off camera, he stayed distant. Crew members later described him as polite but detached. He didn't linger on set, rarely joined social gatherings, and avoided the kind of casual bonds that might have tied him more closely to his co-stars. The distance between Carney and Meadows grew noticeable. While Meadows spoke fondly of her colleagues in interviews, Carney rarely mentioned her at all. When he did discuss the Honeymooners, he focused on Gleason, not Alice or Audrey. Some observers have suggested subtle competition may have played a role. Meadows' sharp timing occasionally stole laughs that might have gone to Carney. Others believe Gleason's style of leadership, keeping his actors slightly isolated, prevented genuine friendships from forming. Whatever the reason, Carney and Meadows remained professional, but not personal. They worked together seamlessly on screen, but the camaraderie ended as soon as the cameras stopped. It was a gap that would never be bridged, even after the show's short run came to an end. When The Honeymooners ended its short but memorable run, the three main cast members went in very different directions. Jackie Gleason quickly returned to the variety show format where he felt most at home. Audrey Meadows built a steady career in film and television, later moving into business and advocacy. Art Carney, however, began to step back. He didn't disappear from acting entirely. Carney continued to take roles, eventually earning critical acclaim and even an Academy Award for Harry and Tonto in 1975. But when it came to anything related to the Honeymooners, he was absent. Cast reunions were organized, tributes aired, and retrospectives celebrated the show's legacy. Carney consistently declined. For fans, the silence was difficult to understand. Gleason and Meadows frequently spoke about the show, often praising Carney's brilliance. Gleason called him a comedic genius. Meadows described him as gentle and gifted, yet Carney offered nothing in return. He avoided interviews, and when he did speak, he focused on the characters and scripts rather than the people he worked with. The most striking part of this withdrawal was his refusal to engage with Audrey Meadows. No public comments, no private reconnections, not even a polite acknowledgement during milestone events. When Meadows died in 1996, Carney was still alive and well, but he released no statement. The silence was total. This wasn't a one-time oversight. It had become a consistent pattern. Carney seemed determined to keep the Honeymooners and its cast firmly in the past. For viewers who believed the three stars were inseparable, the reality was jarring. The man who played Ed Norton, everyone's favorite neighbor, had stepped away from the legacy that made him famous, leaving only questions in his place. Art Carney's distance from the Honeymooners cannot be separated from his personal struggles. Throughout his life, Carney battled anxiety, depression, and alcoholism. These issues were largely hidden during the 1950s, when stars were expected to maintain an image of stability, but behind the scenes, they shaped his behavior. Carney's sensitivity and perfectionism often worked in his favor as a performer. He could take the smallest comic beat and turn it into something unforgettable, but the same qualities made fame exhausting. He once admitted that public attention made him uncomfortable, and those close to him said he often seemed more at ease when no one recognized him at all. By the early 1960s, Carney's struggles escalated into what his family later described as an emotional collapse. The public explanation was that he was taking a break, but privately, he was wrestling with depression and drinking heavily. His marriage went through cycles of separation and reconciliation, leaving his personal life unstable. His children later described periods where he was physically present but emotionally absent, a shadow in his own home. These challenges made the high-pressure environment of live television especially difficult. Gleason's last-minute script changes, the absence of rehearsal, and the constant demand for flawless timing added stress that Carney carried silently. While he never missed a cue, the toll was significant. It also helps explain why he avoided close connections with his co-stars. For Carney, retreating was a coping mechanism. As his career progressed, Carney proved himself as more than a comic actor. His Academy Award win for Harry and Tonto showed his range and depth. Yet even at the height of this recognition, he remained private, avoiding the spotlight as much as possible. Unlike Gleason, who thrived on attention, or Meadows, who embraced public life, Carney pulled back. That withdrawal extended to his past work. By distancing himself from the Honeymooners and those associated with it, Carney may have been trying to protect himself from reminders of a time filled with both success and personal strain. His silence toward Audrey Meadows, then, wasn't necessarily about animosity. It may have been the byproduct of a man who carried more pain than he let the world see. While Art Carney chose silence, Audrey Meadows remained open about her experiences on the Honeymooners. In interviews, she often praised the show, spoke warmly about Jackie Gleason, and acknowledged the impact the series had on her career. Her 1994 memoir, Love, Alice, reflected that tone, fond, reflective, and appreciative of the work they had done together. When it came to Carney, however, Meadows' words were noticeably restrained. She described him as brilliant and gentle, but she stopped short of calling him a friend. For someone she had shared the stage with in such an iconic way, the distance in her descriptions stood out. In later interviews, Meadows became more candid. Asked directly about her relationship with Carney after the show ended, she admitted they never spoke again. She didn't frame it as a conflict or a grudge. Instead, she said simply that they were very different people. Carney, in her view, was not comfortable around others, not even himself. There was no bitterness in her words, only recognition of his private nature. In another interview, she recalled rehearsals as efficient and polite, with everyone going their separate ways afterward. For her, the show was magic on screen, but quiet behind the scenes. She suggested that Carney's distance wasn't personal, it was how he lived. Still, Meadows acknowledged the sadness of that gap. She admitted that she sometimes wondered if Carney felt misunderstood or misrepresented, not by the public, but by those closest to him. She described seeing a kind of longing in his eyes, something that hinted at a deeper struggle he never expressed. Even near the end of her life, Meadows returned to the subject. In one of her final interviews, she said she had always hoped she and Carney might speak again, even just once. She emphasized that there was nothing bitter between them, only silence. That silence, she remarked, could be louder than an argument. Her reflections painted a picture not of hostility, but of missed connection. While Carney shut the door, Meadows kept a measure of openness, accepting that the lack of contact might have been his way of coping. Over the decades following the Honeymooners, opportunities arose for the cast to reunite. Jackie Gleason occasionally revisited the characters on his variety programs. Tributes and anniversary specials were organized, and later the show was inducted into the Television Hall of Fame. Audrey Meadows participated in many of these events, speaking fondly of her time on the series. Jackie Gleason, despite his well-known ego, publicly praised both Meadows and Carney. Carney, however, remained absent. He declined invitations to appear at celebrations and retrospectives, even when they promised significant financial compensation. Producers who reached out were met with polite refusals. He showed no interest in revisiting the role of Ed Norton or reconnecting with the people who had shared that stage with him. The absence became more pronounced during major milestones. When Gleason died in 1987, Meadows paid tribute, acknowledging his talent and influence. Carney stayed quiet. Later, when the Honeymooners received industry recognition, Meadows again participated. Carney again declined. His silence became its own story, a contrast to the warm recollections of his co-stars. The most striking moment came in 1996, when Audrey Meadows passed away. She had lived a full life beyond acting, with success in business and advocacy, but for fans, she would always be Alice. Many expected Carney to release at least a short statement, to acknowledge the woman who had been central to his most famous work. He did not. There was no tribute, no comment, not even a brief mention. By then, his silence was not surprising, but it was still difficult for fans to understand. The lack of acknowledgement underscored how completely Carney had separated himself from that part of his life. leaving behind a mystery that only deepened as the years passed. In 1961, only a few years after the Honeymooners ended, Art Carney suffered what his family later described as a breakdown. Publicly, it was explained as time away from acting, but privately, he was struggling with depression, anxiety, and drinking. Friends said the applause that audiences thought he thrived on actually made him uneasy. Even success felt like pressure, not reward. This private collapse offers one explanation for his distance. For Carney, revisiting the Honeymooners may have meant revisiting a period tied not only to fame, but also to personal turmoil. Years later, he gave a rare interview where he remarked, "Sometimes things end and you don't realize the chapter has closed until you look back and see no one turned the page." It was cryptic but telling, a quiet acknowledgement that something unspoken had kept him from looking back. Audrey Meadows, in contrast, never expressed anger over the silence. In her final interviews, she said she had hoped she and Carney might speak again, even once. She suggested that he carried guilt, though she could not name over what. Her words painted a portrait of regret without resentment, as if she understood that his silence was more about his own pain than about her. That silence became part of the legacy. Fans imagined that the three stars remained as close as they appeared on screen. The reality was different. Gleason maintained contact with Meadows. Meadows remained open and reflective. But Carney chose absence, and his refusal to comment after Meadows' death in 1996 only reinforced the mystery. Some theorized there was a hidden disagreement. Others believed it was nothing more dramatic than Carney's lifelong need for distance. Whatever the truth, he carried it with him. When he died in 2003, no explanation followed, only the same unanswered questions. The legacy of the Honeymooners rests on its timeless comedy, but around that legacy lingers the quieter story of what was left unsaid. For Carney, silence was a shield. For Meadows, it was an unanswered hope. For audiences, it became a puzzle that will likely never be solved. The unanswered gap between them is what keeps the story alive. Two careers forever linked on screen, but divided off it, with no resolution offered. Now, more than half a century later, the Honeymooners still make people laugh. The chemistry between Ralph, Alice, and Norton remains as sharp as ever. Yet the silence between Art Carney and Audrey Meadows hangs in the background, a reminder that what happens on screen does not always mirror life behind it. Carney never gave his reason. Meadows never pressed for one. Their distance became permanent, and the truth disappeared with them. In the end, the mystery is not about scandal or betrayal. It is about the spaces people leave unspoken. And sometimes, as Audrey Meadows once said, silence is louder than an argument. For fans, that silence now feels like part of the story itself, an enduring reminder that even legends can leave questions that no one will ever answer.